All right, in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Attempts of Jews and heretics to dishonor... we are on the 4th chapter now. The Nestorian heresy and the Third Ecumenical Council. Here's a picture. Icon of the Theotokos, joy of all who sorrow. This copy was originally located in Harbin, China, where the image greatly darkened by time was miraculously renewed during the 1920s. It is now treasured in the Church of St. Sergius of Redonez in New York City, commemorated October the 24th. When all those who had dared to speak against the sanctity and purity of the Most Holy Virgin Mary had been reduced to silence, an attempt was made to destroy her veneration as Mother of God. In the 5th century, the Archbishop of Constantinople, Nestorius, began to preach that of Mary had been born only the man Jesus, in whom the divinity had taken abode and dwelt in him as in a temple. First he allowed his presbyter, Anastasius, and then he himself began to teach openly in church that one should not call Mary Theotokos, since she had not given birth to the God-man. He considered it demeaning for himself to worship a child wrapped in swaddling clothes and lying in a manger. Such sermons evoked a universal disturbance and uncease over the purity of faith. At first in Constantinople and then everywhere else, where rumors of the new church, or the new teaching spread, St. Proclus, the disciple of St. John Chrysostom, who was then bishop of Cyzicus and later archbishop of Constantinople, in the presence of Nestorius, gave in church a sermon in which he confessed the Son of God, born in the flesh of the Virgin, who in truth is the Theotokos, birth-giver of God. For already in the womb of the most pure one, at the time of her conception, the divinity was united with the child conceived of the Holy Spirit, and this child, even though he was born of the Virgin Mary only in his human nature, still was born already true God and true man. Nestorius stubbornly refused to change his teaching, saying that one must distinguish between Jesus and the Son of God, that Mary should not be called Theotokos, but Christokos, birth-giver of God, since the Jesus who was born of Mary was only the man Christ, which signifies Messiah, anointed one, like to God's anointed ones of old, the prophets, only surpassing them in fullness of communion with God. The teaching of Nestorius thus constituted a denial of the whole economy of God, for if from Mary only a man was born, then it was not God who suffered for us, but a man. St. Cyril, Archbishop of Alexandria, finding out about the teaching of Nestorius and about the church disorders evoked by this teaching in Constantinople, wrote a letter to Nestorius in which he tried to persuade him to hold the teaching which the church had confessed from its foundation, not to introduce anything novel into this teaching. In addition, St. Cyril wrote to the clergy and people of Constantinople that they should be firm in the orthodox faith and not fear the persecutions by Nestorius against those who were not in agreement with him. St. Cyril also wrote informing everything to Rome, to the Holy Pope, Celestine, who with all his flock was then firm in orthodoxy. St. Celestine, for his part, wrote to Nestorius and called upon him to preach the orthodox faith, and not his own. But the Nestorius remained deaf to all persuasion, and replied that what he was preaching was the orthodox faith, while his opponents were heretics. St. Cyril wrote Nestorius again and composed 12 anathemas, that is, set forth in 12 paragraphs the chief differences of the orthodox teaching from the teaching preached by Nestorius, acknowledging as excommunicated from the church everyone who should reject even a single one of these paragraphs he had composed. Here is the Greek icon of the Theotokos, the life-giving spring, 20th century, commemorated on Bright Friday. Nestorius rejected the whole of the text composed by St. Cyril and wrote his own exposition of the teaching which he preached, likewise in 12 paragraphs, giving over to anathema, that is, excommunication from the church, everyone who did not accept it. The danger to purity of faith was increasing all the time. St. Cyril wrote a letter to Theodosius the Younger, who was then reigning, to his wife Eudocia, and to the emperor's sister Pulcheria, entreating them likewise to concern themselves with ecclesiastical matters and restrain the heresy. It was decided to convene an ecumenical council, at which hierarchs gathered from the ends of the world should decide whether the faith preached by Nestorius was orthodox. As the place for the council, which was to be the Third Ecumenical Council, they chose the city of Ephesus, in which the Most Holy Virgin Mary had once dwelt, together with the Apostle John and John the theologian. St. Cyril gathered his fellow bishops in Egypt, and together with them traveled by sea to Ephesus. From Antioch overland came John, Archbishop of Antioch. With the eastern bishops, the Bishop of Rome, St. Celestine, could not go himself and ask St. Cyril to defend the orthodox faith. And in addition, he sent from himself 2 bishops and the presbyter of the Roman Church, Philip, to whom he also gave instructions as to what to say. St. Ephesus there came likewise Nestorius and the bishops of the Constantinople region, and the bishops of Palestine, Asia Minor, and Cyprus.